But when you don't plan ahead for a funeral, you're going to be scrambling to make a lot of decisions and spend a lot of money in a short amount of time.
What's that thing that is so important that people just miss when they shouldn't?
I think the question that nobody is asking me that they should is,
This is the Buried in Work podcast, where we share tips and interview experts to help you simplify estate planning and end-of-life tasks.
Most people would rather do anything than talk about death. It's uncomfortable for many people. It's scary. And frankly, it's something that we, oftentimes try and push off until later. But here's the truth. Avoiding the conversation doesn't stop death from happening. It just makes it harder for the people that we love. And that's why we're here today with Gail Rubin. She is the Doyenne of Death. It's where she comes in. She's made it her mission to break down the stigma around death and funeral planning with humor and storytelling and straight talk. She has books. She speaks in many, many different venues across the country. She's organized the Before I Die festivals, and she's helping people control the final chapter before it's too late. Gail, it's great to have you here.
Adam, great to be with you.
Yeah.
Every day on this side of the sod is a good day.
This side of the sod. I love it. Getting off to a good start. All right, now, it's true that not a lot of people like to talk about death. As a result, people start procrastinating. What are some of the biggest excuses that you've seen for not planning?
Oh, well, people are very uncomfortable with the topic. They think if they talk about it, it's going to happen sooner rather than later. But, there are no guarantees. Anything could happen on any days. And I think there's actually underneath it all a self-esteem issue. There are people who might say, well, I don't want to talk about it because it'll make it happen. But when you look at the statistics of the people who do plan ahead, it's about a third of adults do end-of-life planning. And when you look at studies of self-esteem, apparently a third of adults have good self-esteem. So I think it's those 2/3 that have low self-esteem or are not doing the planning.
And this is something that you've probably come into over many, many, many years of helping people organize and get prepared. Tell us a little bit about your background. This is an unusual career path for a lot of people, and the way that you've pursued it is even more unique than many.
Yes, my background is actually public relations and event planning. And I got married in 2000, had a very creative Jewish Western wedding. Everybody had such a good time. I wanted to write a book about creative life cycle events and call it Matchings, Hatchings, and Dispatchings, about weddings and births and death. And I got to write a monthly feature in our local newspaper by that name, and it was the stories about death and funerals that got the most reader response. And I figured, there's already plenty on creative wedding planning. We don't need more on that topic, but there wasn't much 15 years ago about creative funeral planning. So I focused on funerals, and that changed the course of my career. And think about it. I mean, funerals and weddings are pretty similar. There's a lot of details that you have to pull together. But when you don't plan ahead for a funeral, you're going to be scrambling to make a lot of decisions and spend a lot of money in a short amount of time.
I guess one of the things that's different between weddings and funerals is you probably can't have a wedding if you're not there. Or in a strange way, you can have a funeral if you're absent.
Well, right. And actually, your body will be there, but your personality will be strangely absent.
Yeah, I guess even if your body's not there, it becomes a memorial service.
Well, right. And so many people are choosing cremation these days.
Yeah.
Usually for cost reasons, or they figure, well, it's a lot more convenient just to be cremated and let people figure out what to do with the remains later. And a lot of people don't do anything with them. They put them in a closet or put them on a shelf or put them in their house or go scatter them.
Yeah.
But, these are decisions that it would be helpful to talk about with your loved ones, if not actually make those plans ahead of time.
How do you help people start those conversations? Because it is a difficult conversation for a lot of people to have.
Well, I use humor a lot of times, although you can only use humor when death seems like a distant possibility. So I want to talk to people well before anybody's sick or dying.
Hmm.
And I know a number of death doulas, usually women who are working with people who realize, oh, gee, I am going to die. I guess I better do some planning now. But I prefer to work with people and be a bridge between the general public and those businesses that want to work with baby boomers primarily to connect them, like with funeral homes, cemeteries, insurance people, financial planners. And I will use film clips to help teach about the need to plan ahead well before anybody's dead.
So what do you mean? Companies are hiring you to go and speak to employees, or how are you working with them?
Well, like with the Before I Die festival, that is sponsored by a number of folks. Funeral homes, hospice helped sponsor my last festival. So to get people to learn about what they need to know and things that they need to consider to plan for. And I have a TV series now called Mortality Movies, where I'm on a set with two other death educators. We watch film clips related to death and grief and funerals and talk about them. So the idea is somebody will remember a film clip a lot longer than they'll remember just whatever a speaker tells them.
Hmm.
So I'm seeking to combine the two, that by remembering the film clip, they'll actually remember the advice associated with it.
It's like Mystery Science Theater 3000, where you're playing into the screen. That's great. Take a step back though. Talk about your festival. Yeah, I think that this is something that is really unique. How many people come? What's the focus? When does it happen? Is it happening again?
Well, I have held 7 of them in New Mexico, starting back in 2017, and I am not the first person to do this festival. I actually found out about it in 2016, and the first Before I Die festivals were actually held in the United Kingdom, in 2013, 2014. So it's a collection of activities that talk about death, but are approachable. So they're in the UK, they had art shows, theater, speakers, movies, behind the scenes tours. So I have done that in New Mexico. First it started in Albuquerque, and
Hmm.
then I added Santa Fe, and one year I was like in Taos, Espanola, Santa Fe, back to Albuquerque, and I almost killed myself that year doing that festival. The pandemic came, we did it online for a year, and then we were back in person. So I get, it can range from in each session, maybe 30 people, but it adds up to, a couple hundred people.
And are people traveling from around the country, or is it primarily focused on people that are in the New Mexico region where the event's held?
It's primarily local, but I have had a few people come from, like, Arizona to participate. And, in fact, this year, I did have a couple of guest speakers who came from other states to highlight some of their work as death doulas
Hmm.
that they were transitioning into becoming. But I also, ever since the pandemic, also had a online option so people could tune in from around the country and also record those speeches, and then I have those presentations available on the beforeidifestivals.com website.
Hmm.
So even if you didn't get to come see it in person, you can access the videos afterwards.
So beforeidifestival.com, that's where people can go, get tickets, and learn
Festivals,
about it?
plural,
Okay.
beforeidifestivals.com.
So you have the TV show that you're working on.
Mhm.
You've got the festival that you have a book, A Good Goodbye, as well.
I actually have 4 books in the end of life field,
How do you have all
although
this time?
it's what I do. And once I get working on something, I keep working on it.
Yeah.
I'm buried in work.
The build and work. I understand that feeling. Yeah. Yeah. So talk about the books.
So, A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die was my first book, and I approached the funeral like a wedding, with all of these aspects about communication, choices to be made. It's the only book out there that's got a chapter just about different religious traditions related to funerals and a planning form that people can fill out that you can download from my website, agoodgoodbye.com. It's like a 10-page form. And the problem with these forms is it's great if you pull together the information, but so
Hmm.
many people, they'll get these planning forms and then not fill them out. And
Yeah.
that's not very helpful. I did a book called Hail and Farewell: Cremation Ceremonies, Templates, and Tips. And this can be used for both a funeral as well as a memorial service, which is when you just have cremated remains or you don't have a body there. And that's a wonderful collection of really helpful templates if you want to put your own funeral or memorial service together. There are readings and music suggestions and things like that.
All right.
And then I also did Kicking the Bucket List: 100 Downsizing and Organizing Things to Do Before You Die, which is one page each with a little artwork and a tip. The first two-thirds is about how to get rid of your stuff and, ways to donate or sell and just approach downsizing all of our stuff. And then the last third is steps to take about planning ahead, talking about wills and trusts, your funeral planning. What are you going to do with your car? There are a lot of things to think about, with our lives, just so much.
What are some of the mistakes that you see people make?
Well, trying to make a statement from beyond the grave with your estate plans,
Hmm.
and cutting people out of wills, and that's really not a great thing. Not planning, people who are not married, not doing power of attorney forms,
Hmm.
or designated agent forms. If you are a couple living together and you're not married, when one person dies, that other person has no rights, and that's a horrible position to put your loved one in. I know a couple here in New Mexico who are, longtime cohabitators, never married, and the woman is just terrified to talk about death, and every time I bring it up, she's like, "We'll deal with it." And it's like, "Okay."
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds complicated. Uh,
Uh, can be. And, my parents both died within the past, well, dad died in August of 2023, mom just died in October of 2024,
mhm.
but they were so well prepared. Of course, their daughter is the Doyenne of Death, and I am the trustee for their estate plans, and they set it up so well. I am so thankful that they did that. I have 3 brothers, and I'm in the midst of being the trustee and facilitating this transition of assets, and if they had not done what they had done, it could be a real awful situation, but it
Yeah.
is going very smoothly, and I am so thankful for that.
Well, let's take from their playbook for people that are listening right now that have zero plans in place. What's their homework?
Well, my dad bought burial plots in the 1980s. So they saved a lot of money on buying burial plots if burial is your plan. They got he prepaid for the, opening and closing the grave, the marker. Although 11 years ago, I pointed out to them, okay, you've got these burial plots, but you haven't made your funeral plans. So we need to get you taken care of with that. So we did pre-planning with a local funeral home to, take care of that, and when they actually died, the funeral home showed me how much more money they would have paid had they not pre-planned. For
Mhm.
my dad, it was like $4,000 more if we hadn't. Same thing with my mom, just an incredible amount of savings. They did their wills and trusts, and they put all their assets in the trust: real estate, investments, bank accounts. So, as the trustee, I am able to make the moves to distribute their assets to my brothers and myself. It's complicated, but we have good advice with the estate attorney, the CPA, and the investment account holders.
Hmm.
I mean, the thing was, when my mom died, it was right before my last Before I Die festival. Literally. She died on October 31st. The festival started November 1st.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, my parents both died on hospice care, which is such a blessing, and I really want to put in a good word for hospice. A lot of people say, "Oh, you go on hospice, you're giving up." No. In fact, my mom was hospitalized 3 times in 2024 with pneumonia, and each time I would fly there to Florida from New Mexico, and we'd get her well enough to go into a skilled nursing facility and hopefully go home. And every time I was like, "Mom, you really ought to consider hospice."
Hmm.
But Mom didn't wanna consider hospice because Dad said, "I want hospice,"
Hmm.
and she was mad at him for doing that. It was like, he didn't fight, but that is not the case with hospice. Hospice is really quite a blessing, so but yes, I was arranging for my mom's funeral behind the scenes while I'm running this festival here in New Mexico. But the fact that we had pre-planned and prepaid for those funerals really took a huge burden off of my shoulders.
It is clear, and there are so many different things that people need to focus on, and oftentimes it's an overwhelming situation. But you just showed easily, and you need to talk about what you want to have happen to you. You need to consider hospice. You have to talk about your estate planning, and it really is this comprehensive system. Last question for you. What's the question that you think people should be asking you, but they don't? What's that thing that is so important that people just miss when they shouldn't?
I think the question that nobody is asking me that they
Hmm.
should is, what do I need to do now? You need to pull your information together. There are 5 key things that go on a death certificate that if you don't talk to your loved ones about it and write it down and share it with them, they're gonna be scrambling and stressed. Your Social Security number. Yeah, you know your own number, but do you know your wife or your spouse's Social Security number?
Yeah.
You probably have it somewhere, but for your siblings or other people who you might be put in the position of planning their funeral. Where were they born? The birthplace, their mother's maiden name. Are they veterans? Because if you're a veteran, you get all kinds of benefits
Hmm.
that can save a lot of money. And then it doesn't go on a death certificate, but what about passwords? We have such an online life now these days, so many people. You die and take your passwords with you, you're in a heap of trouble. And my husband died. I've had quite the 2 years. First, my husband died unexpectedly after a low risk surgery of medical complications. Then it was my dad. Then it was my in laws. And then it was my mom. And of all those people, I didn't have to worry so much about my in laws' online life. And my dad had provided lots of spreadsheets with passwords for him. But my husband, married to the Doyenne of Death, I've got a spreadsheet of like 5 pages of passwords, and he did not do that.
Yeah.
So,
No,
with
that's
his online stuff, I was stuck, you
it
know?
is unbelievably important to get all that information in place. And that's why Buried in Work has the Clear Kit and our 55 plus information hubs. The reality is that, on average, it takes over 500 hours to settle an estate in the country. And a lot of that's because people have to go on a scavenger hunt, finding information that they should have at their fingertips. So I think that's a good way to wrap it up. It's clear that death is inevitable, but chaos doesn't need to be. And, you've been very fortunate to help so many people through your books, through the festival, through the TV show. Gail, it's a pleasure to speak with you. One last time, if people want to find you, where can they go online?
My main website, agoodgoodbye.com. You can get the planning form. from there. And if you want to see videos from the Before I Die Festival, you can go to beforeidifestivals.com.
All right. Thanks, Gail. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Buried in Work podcast. Remember, you can save 10% on our estate preparation package and games with code podcast10 at buriedinwork.com.